think about it, as well. It is. So is the food on our tables. It's also a tradition as a result of this fasting exercise in Islam that we never throw food away. You may have seen your Muslim friend, walking down, any of the hallways or down the campus, and there's some food on the ground, and they'll sort of stoop down and pick it up and put it to the side. We don't mean to freak you out just because that's how much we appreciate that food. It's considered holy because of those who lack even the simplest of foods. Who would, if they found that, piece of bread or whatever on the ground, would jump over it and try to eat it, to find sustenance for themselves. So it's that level of sensitivity to the world in which we live that is bred and encouraged through the concept of fasting and the tradition of fasting. I did want to spoke to the organizers and ask permission to take some questions towards the end because I wanted to make this more interactive. And it doesn't have to be about fasting specifically. It could be about anything pertaining to Islam or the spirit of Islam, especially as it pertains to the social the encouragement for us to be socially engaged and to feel each other. Before I do that, I want to finish with one final point about the spirit of Islam. As somebody who works in the civil rights business, if you want to call it that, the civil rights industry, and often I'm on Fox News, debating those who are on the other end of the aisle, those who are Islamophobes or who are in line with the far right radical ideological opinions and views of Muslims and other minorities. I often ask myself, and I'm often asked, is there a war between Islam and the West, at least in terms of ideology? Is there a war of civilizations, the famous Samuel Huntington quote that we all heard before? Is there a clash of civilizations? And the more I think about it, the more I arrive at this conclusion. And it's reaffirmed by verses of the Quran. That yes, there is a clash, and yes, there is a war. But it's not between Islam and the West. It's not even between Islam and Christianity, or Islam and Judaism, or Judaism and Christianity, or the East and the West, or any of those type of things. There is a war and a clash between extremism, regardless of where it comes. Those who are, for example, making these anti-Muslim movies, and those who react to them in extreme fashion, they need each other to validate their own ideological perspectives. They create these films, and when they get a reaction, they point and say, see, we told you so. They feel validated. But the other side are quick to point and take advantage of these essentially marginal expressions and say, we told you so. They hate us, and they feed off of each other. Whereas the majority of people who are in the mainstream, in the middle, the moderates, are really at odds with both. Whether you're Christian, Jewish, or Muslim, if you're in the moderate mainstream, you're on the same side. And whether you're Christian, Jewish, or Muslim, if you're in either extreme, you're on the same side. And the clash is between the moderates and the extremes. Not between religions and not between geographical locations. But beyond that, the clash starts within. There is no good group inherently, and evil group inherently. There is no good religion and evil religion in that sense. I can't say all Muslims are good or all Muslims are evil. I can't say all Jews are good or all Jews are evil. It's not by categories of humans. It's not by country. It's not by race. It's not by geographical location. It's not even by a subgroup or a family. It's at the level of the individual. And even then, there isn't really an inherently evil person and an inherently good person. Even then, we each have the capacity for both. And the real war, the real clash, happens within. In the Quran, it states that every human being, every soul, is born with a capacity for good and a capacity for evil. It does not say that you're born good or you're born evil. There is no original sin, and there is no original salvation. You're born with a capacity for both. And this is where the fairness and justice comes in. That it's up to you, based on two things. It's not how you look. It's not which family you're born into, which race, or which religion, or anything else. It's not based on any external criteria that you are judged by God, but by two things that you have full command on. The first is intention. How much you purify your intention when you do what you do. And the second thing is effort. How much effort you put into it. The first in Arabic we say niyya, and the second is a word you've heard before but often misdefined, jihad, the effort to get from a bad place to a better place. That's the meaning of the word. And these are the two things that Muslims aspire to. It's not only war. It's jihad, the effort to get to a better place, and the niyya, the intention. And that's what God judges us by. And ultimately, when you have the capacity for good and the capacity for evil, the Quran states, he or she, the unidentified pronoun who can be he or she, who feeds the good, will that succeed? And he or she that feeds the evil will then fail. And I think back to the famous story, the Native American story of the grandfather whose grandchild asked him about the nature of human beings, and he said each of us has two wolves. One that is good and one that is bad. And the kid asked grandfather, well, which one wins? And his answer was, the one you feed. Same exact idea. So that's where it all starts. When we lose that war, it then shows externally. And the more people that lose that war together, that's when you have evil groups. But again, it's a state of being. It'll always change depending on what you think. But it's never an inherent thing. And so, in closing, it is up to each and every one of us to sort of win that internal battle, to remain with a strong sense of conscientiousness when we're dealing with ourselves, with our God, with others, and know that that's where it all starts. Thank you very much for some of that. So does anybody have any comments? Does it have to be a question? If you have a comment, something that you want to get off your chest, an idea. There's a microphone that we're passing around.
You talk about the importance of moderation, and not coming on the fringe of either side. On the fringe of either side. But when we live, like for example in this country, this voting Democrat, is that really going to do anything for social justice when we have problems on such a massive, like deeply rooted scale? Like, wouldn't a bit of, extremism be necessary if the status quo is, so impotent?
It's a very interesting question. It's a very deep question. It requires a long and deep answer. But basically, this answer is not just about the Democratic Party. It could be either one. Because I think there's plenty of blame to share. And I happen to lead right now. It's not something that's inherent to me. It's not something that's ingrained in my genes. But right now, given the way politics are going, since my personal capacity here has no political affiliation, I tend to lean Democratic because I think it's more of a moderate party. I think the GOP has more sort of extreme elements in my personal opinion. But even there, it's not a blind thing. The first right you have as an American is to challenge the status quo, including the status quo that you think you support. And so by being active in the Democratic Party, that's the first step towards me rectifying that which I think is wrong. As you lobby politicians, as you do what you do in terms of activism, whether it's writing letters to the editor or blogging, or in my case, running interviews or giving speeches, we're always inching back in order to represent that which we think is just and fair. But if you step back and leave the status quo the way it is, it will always be the way it is. And if you enter from an extreme perspective, think about results. You will not be effective. All you will do is polarize, kind of push people in their comfort zones away from you and achieve nothing. You'll feel good about yourself, being a revolutionary, rebellious person who's coming from a strong perspective. But look at the results. You want to be effective. In order to be effective, you need to communicate with people clearly at their level and inch towards progress and improvement. Not force, not twist arms, but inch towards it. That's the way the world works. The civil rights movement in this country had a combination of both. It was strategic, and that's why it was successful. Politics has always been about that. So, I remain optimistic, not cynical. There are things that need to change, but if you look at the bigger graph, we're going in a better direction. And Muslims today are facing certain challenges, but so have others before us. And guess what? The challenges that we face are actually, if you're hearing this from a Muslim so-called leader, are actually less so than those that have faced them in the past. Islamophobia today, as terrible as it is not the first to go out there and fight against it, in truth, is nowhere near what African Americans faced in the past. And probably not as bad as the first wave of anti-Semitism, anti-Catholicism, anti-Italian, anti-Irish, which were pretty blatant expressions of bigotry. In 1900, 1910, 1920, there once were signs on restaurants and places of employment that would say, dogs and Irish need not apply. You're not going to find that sign about Muslims today. Granted, the bigots and the hate mongers are more sophisticated about how they express themselves, but we have progress because of those who have dealt with the status quo inch by inch. And then now, history is calling upon us, Muslims and our friends, to do our part, not just for our own community, but for those that will come after us. Any other questions or comments? You guys that well fed?
How do you pronounce the blessing that you said in the very beginning?
The blessing?
Peace and blessings.
Oh, assalamu alaikum. Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, so assalamu alaikum means peace be upon you. And if you want to add the blessings at the end, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We can write this down for you. I don't expect you to remember that. Rahmatullah means the mercy of God. So three things that we sort of rain on each other when we meet each other. It's peace, blessings, and mercy. How was Easter? I mean, how many people here fasted today? Oh, good number. Anybody have a really hard time? Was anybody really glad it was over? I'm always glad it was over. Will anybody do it again next year? Where's the next year? Nobody raised their hand. All right, guys, thanks so much for listening. Have a great night.